Hello, everybody. Welcome to a very special episode of Frame Trap. I'm joined by recurring guest, Mitchell Saltzman.
Hello, hello.
First time he's actually done a Frame Trap in the studio.
Yeah, this is amazing. I've never been here before.
Yeah. I mean, it was like crazy because, I've known you for so long where it's like, wow, I really can't believe he hasn't done a Frame Trap in the studio. It's so weird.
Yeah.
But glad to have you. And also joined by Daniel Bloodworth.
Hello.
I like that shirt. Is that a Nidhogg shirt?
Yeah, it's a Nidhogg t-shirt. Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Nice.
Oh, man, that's awesome.
Yeah. I got it from them when we did a preview for it. Yeah.
That's so cool.
Mitch, with you being here, of course, we have to talk about fighting games.
Gotta.
And Blood, feel free to weigh in on this as well. What do you think of the EVO 2022 lineup? I think it's a very interesting lineup.
Yeah, I think it makes, a decent degree of sense.
Yeah.
You kind of get Street Fighter V send-off year.
Yeah. Which is cool. Yeah. It'll be a feel-good thing.
Mortal Kombat 11 feels like it kind of might have outstayed its welcome. I mean, it feels like Mortal Kombat 11 has been such a big part of EVO online because the netcode is so good.
Yeah.
My brain tells me it's got to be because they got a NetherRealm Studios announcement that they wanna plug.
Yeah. Yeah, that, MK12 possibly around the corner. Also, Smash not being there, which really sucks.
Yeah, and that's another thing where, like, you would expect now that they're back in person. The reason why they didn't do Smash at EVO Online is because the Smash Brothers Ultimate netcode is terrible.
Yeah.
But I think that's more of an issue of just, Nintendo not being able to broker a deal with, the new owners of EVO.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. It sounds like Nintendo has its own, like, weird pie-in-the-sky picture of what they want a Smash Brothers tournament to be, and it doesn't look like EVO. And so, it's this weird thing where it's like they're just a little out of sync with what other people want. It's like, just, you can do that thing, but do this too.
Yeah, it's so frustrating. Like, obviously, both the Smash Brothers community and EVO itself has gone through pretty tremendous controversy over the last several years. But in 2019, being in there in person at EVO, like, the Smash audience was, like, overwhelming. Like, you'd go to the Smash area, and, like, there were so many people, they were so stoked to be there. And I think just, like, as a fan, I just want people to have that outlet, and it's a bummer that they won't get to this year. Yeah, Mortal Kombat 11 is interesting. I feel like I have not really seen people talk about MK11 in, like, it just feels like done in a way. And maybe I just don't have the right perspective on it, but yeah, it's going to be, I'm curious to see what the entrants for each game are going to be. Another one that I'm curious about is Melty Blood. With that just coming out, I feel like King of Fighters is kind of eating its lunch, or I haven't seen a lot of Melty Blood hype, but I'm not really familiar.
Yeah, Melty Blood's cool, and I mean, you look at the lineup, it really is kind of the most recent, like, big name fighting games. Melty Blood, you can argue whether it's big or not, but there's a loud, passionate crowd for Melty Blood that are going to be super stoked that it's going to be on the main stage of EVO. My big, like, snub, I guess you would call it, is Soul Calibur. I think Soul Calibur 6, if we're gonna, like, put games that are beyond the end of their life cycle, like Mortal Kombat, they should get Soul Calibur in there. Soul Calibur is so exciting to watch.
I was just gonna say, boy, you're really hitting a nerve, because I would much rather watch Soul Calibur than MK. And I love MK.
I love Mortal Kombat. I mean,
and I like playing Mortal Kombat 11, but oh my god, is it so boring to watch?
Ooh.
Yeah.
I don't know if I would call it boring to watch, but
it might be a hot take. I don't know. I think just the speed of MKX was more exciting. But yeah, I really like playing Mortal Kombat 11. I don't get a lot of joy from watching it. I do think Soul Calibur is super exciting.
Yeah, for sure.
To watch. Something that stood out to me and I was actually really stoked about is Granblue Fantasy Versus, because I feel like that game kind of came out at the wrong time and didn't really have like a huge major tournament to shine in. And I think it's really cool. And I think it's a game that a lot of people are unfamiliar with. And I think it's a great beginning fighting game.
For sure.
And it looks gorgeous. And so I'm happy to see it get a shot.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's also a good lead-in for, it's a good, almost like appetite whetter for DNF Duel, which is, on the horizon. So yeah, Granblue would have been like such a huge hit if it was tied to a franchise that the West knows anything about.
Yeah.
If it had decent netcode, which it didn't. And like everything else, like the characters are like the movesets are really cool.
Yeah.
It does have that good, that really good like fundamentals based, like neutral style of fighting game gameplay. And I also wish it had a better story mode, but what fighting game does these days?
Yeah, Grand Blue Fantasy is so weird because you can play it in English, but there is no official English release.
Yeah.
And the game is massive, and so it's kind of a shame, like you said, that it never got that recognition. I think, that RPG that's been in development forever, if that could have kind of come out at the same time.
That would have been perfect. Because I'm actually really stoked for that game. That game looks really cool.
Yeah.
I don't even remember the name of it, but it looks awesome.
It's one of those games that I feel like has been in development so long that, like, yeah, I was stoked years ago, and it's just been so long that it's kind of fallen off. Any other thoughts on the Evo lineup? Anything?
I wish Them's Fighting Herds made it. Them's Fighting Herds, I don't think gets enough respect.
Sure.
That game, I think a lot of people take it at face value, and granted, its face value is, ponies, kicking each other's, asses, I guess. It's a really, really, not even solid. It's great. That game is great. The combos are super fun to pull off. The netcode is fantastic. It has one of the best online lobbies I think I've ever played. And its story mode is surprisingly ambitious. Granted, it still is only on the first chapter of story mode. I hope that they get chapter 2 out soon. But man, Them's Fighting Herds is utterly fantastic.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't played a single second of it, and I've only done the lightest of dabbling. But Mighty Morphin Power Rangers Battle for the Grid, the tiny bit that I've touched that game, I was like, this game is insane and kind of awesome.
Yeah.
And I feel like it kind of gets snubbed when it comes to attention or just tournaments. Licensing nightmare, I'm sure, but
I feel bad about that game because I got to review it when it first came out. And when it came out, it was not the same game that it is now.
Yeah.
And I unfortunately haven't really gotten into it since it added so many other characters and addressed a lot of the issues that I had with it. But yeah, it looks really, really cool.
You mentioned NetherRealm announcing very likely Mortal Kombat 12. Any other announcements that you're expecting? Street Fighter 6 will probably show up there.
Yeah.
Anything you've got your mind on for Arc System Works or?
I think Arc System Works, they got to go through their whole back catalog and add rollback, netcode, and everything. They're already starting it.
Didn't they add it to?
They're adding it to Ultimax.
Okay, yeah. No, the cross tag. Didn't they add it to cross tag, or am I?
I think they might have added it to cross tag. They need to put it on Dragon Ball. Dragon Ball needs it. That's the number one thing that they need to do. Then beyond that, new characters in DNF Duel. I don't think we're getting a brand new big, megaton announcement from them, but it would be cool to see a new BlazBlue, I guess.
Yeah, it would be.
BlazBlue in the style of Guilty Gear Strive.
I don't think this is going to happen. I think it's way too soon. But a Tekken 8 announcement would be hype as hell. Even just the slightest of teases would be really exciting. And oh man, I want to go to I was talking to my wife about this. I hope I get to go this year because going in 2019 was just one of the best experiences of my life. Just being soaked in that energy. Everybody was happy and really into fighting games, and I was like, "This is heaven."
Yeah.
And yeah, just the energy, especially on the final day in that arena, was super awesome.
Oh man, were you there when they started singing? When they did the sing along for Indestructible?
Yes, I was.
Oh,
yeah,
God,
yeah,
it was so good.
Dude, they should put that song in Street Fighter 6, man.
Let's put it down right now. Anyone who says that Indestructible is a bad song,
I don't know how you could, oh my God, that. No,
ask yourself which one you remember more, Street Fighter 4's theme or Street Fighter 5's theme. I think that would answer the question for you.
It's so hype. Yeah, and then were you there for the
Will It Kill?
No, although great. No, the snake troll.
Oh,
Dakota
yeah,
call?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
that was
man,
awesome.
Big controversy around that was great. Okay, let's actually get into the games. Blood, let's you know what? Let's start with you because you mentioned that you just finished your script for Gran Turismo 7.
Yeah.
Review copy provided by PlayStation, right?
Thank you.
I
Yeah.
almost forgot that.
No, I would have. So
Okay,
thank you.
yes.
Mitch doesn't have to deal with this nonsense.
Yeah, no,
I just
really
kind
annoying.
of, let other people take care of it, I guess.
that would be really nice. Not that it's that big of a deal. But yeah, Gran Turismo 7, Blood, this is a game that I wish I wasn't so slammed with other things because the brief time that I've put into it, I've really liked it. But I'm coming at it from a relatively newcomer perspective, whereas, you're not only a veteran of this series, but also Forza and other games. So, yeah, what's your take on it?
Yeah, it's kind of curious to know what exactly you were looking for, because like my head just came out of the review, so I'm like, how am I gonna not repeat myself?
Yeah,
But,
no, it's okay. Trust me, I have repeated review quotes many times on Freight Trap. It's unavoidable.
Every episode of Podcast Beyond.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think one of the things it was interesting is it's like, like we talk about like where scores and stuff land, and what's funny is that like I've kind of been like in the same score like throughout this whole past few weeks, but the reasons for it have changed over time.
that's interesting.
And so, but yeah, I think the main thing is that this thing has turned me into like a DualSense controller believer for driving games.
Okay, that
Whereas
impactful.
before the past few generations, like Xbox controller was always my preferred controller. And part of it is because of the off-center sticks. Part of it is because the triggers have always been better on Xbox, especially like the PS3 triggers are just garbage.
Yes, that is accurate. God, I hate the PS3 triggers.
But there's just been times in Gran Turismo 7 where with the resistance on the analog triggers, it is like allowed me to just like pull off just this ever so subtle like acceleration coming out of a corner. Like, okay, if I blast it, it's not gonna. I'm gonna have a problem. But if I can just like barely touch it and
That's
just
awesome.
slightly pull it in, and I don't think it has any more like degrees of an analog trigger, right? Like even back on the GameCube, it was like 255 degrees of sensitivity, but because of that resistance,
Right.
it allows you to like nail the sweet spot that you want, pull it in how far you want it, and keep it in that spot.
A question that I have for you, and I think this is a personal failing as a player, is sometimes I'll get so immersed in a game, and I feel like even with the DualSense, even when there's resistance to the triggers, it's not that it isn't really cool, but it's kind of like Rumble, where like I'll just be so focused on what I'm doing, and I'll get used to repeating the same action over and over again that it's like my fingers will just get used to it, and I won't even really notice anymore. Does that happen to you, or do you feel like that resistance was pretty significant throughout your playing from beginning to end?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's things with the haptics that you kind of get, like when you like hit a rumble strip on the side or whatever, and like when you first start the game and you feel that from one side of the controller, it's like, oh, that's really cool, and you kind of don't notice it. Whereas I think with the resistant triggers, because they're communicating so much about what's happening with your wheels and your brakes and your accelerator, like it's like, no, actually, the more time I put into it, the more I've been able to actually use that to my advantage. And so it really gives me just that nuance just a little bit better, and I've used that obviously like with Xbox controllers and stuff in the past, but it just feels like there's, again, like just being able to hit that sweet spot when you need it to come out of that turn just right.
Coming from, GT Sport and then further back GT6, what are the major improvements in GT7?
I think the controls are there.
Right.
I think the main thing is just that there's a more consistency in quality, right? So Gran Turismo 5, Gran Turismo 6, like they just threw everything, just like shoved it in there, right? I want to say like Gran Turismo 6 had a car list that was like 1,200 cars or something like that. But a lot of them in GT5 and GT6 were like they look like little cardboard cutouts. They just literally copied and pasted models over from like the PS2. Sometimes it seemed like they were under PS2 spec. There were times, I remember it was so hilarious. There were times where like, okay, we added cockpit views, but it was just like a silhouette. There was no detail in the cockpit. It was just black. It was just a black mask over the screen that was supposed to be the cockpit view. I was like, what is happening? And the same thing with the backgrounds. It was just like these little like paper, like it looked like a 2D thing out of like Mario 64 or something.
Yeah.
For like trees or background details and stuff.
That's so weird because one of the things that I think strikes me so much about GT7 is like how much car pornography it is in the sheer amount of detail that it will go into, where it will, like, you go to the cafe and it's like, let me tell you about this car and why it's so cool. And there's just such this like strong enthusiasm that like not having that detail seems counter to like everything else in the presentation.
Right. Well, I think part of the reason is, again, they're just so focused on gameplay and frame rate, right? Like even here, like, one of the cool takeaways is like, even when you turn ray tracing mode on, they do not use it when you're behind the wheel. They only use it in replays and cutscenes and all of that, so that it's always hitting that 60 as cleanly as they possibly can. And then, the cafe I think the cafe is wonderful. Mm-hmm. Like, it is such a great device. Like,
and it's so bizarre.
It can be bizarre too.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that it would have gone a long way if they had actually had a character model or a video or something of like a person actually talking and emoting to you rather than a photograph that just kind of does like this weird like text message bubble thing.
It's so bizarre.
And then tap, 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 tap.
Yeah.
It's strange.
It feels like that. Because, like, the cafe itself, right, like, they'll have, like, really nice images of the cafe, and it'll be very serene. But then the, like, tap, 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 and the photos of the people, it feels like it's coming from a completely different era of video games. You know what I mean? Like, I can't... It's, like, amazing that, like, a high-budget 2022 current-gen game, like, has that presentation with it.
Well, the menus can be somewhat that way, too.
Sure.
With the little, like... mouse cursor that you click on things. But no, I think the cafe structure is really good. I think the one thing that I think is a bit of a detriment, but you get over it because it only takes a few hours, is that unlocking all of the different features is tied to getting through the missions in the cafe.
Sure.
And so, like, if you pick up the game and somebody wants to play multiplayer with you, it's like, well, sorry, I got to play the game for 3 or 4 hours before I unlock multiplayer. And stuff like that is a little strange. But I think the actual like process of going to the cafe, getting the menu books, which I think the way that they even describe that is funny. It's like, you get the menu book, all right, and now here's the 3 cards you have to get, and, and take that with you. But it does a great job of walking you through all of the elements of this gigantic game. And there's so many different facets and kind of weird things like the photography mode and scapes. And it's like, go over here and check this out. We're going to teach you how it works. And same thing with like the auto shop where you get your car washed, and the same thing with upgrades and just like all of these little things. And then on top of that, it basically is your campaign. So it's like, okay, collecting these cars. Well, how do you collect the cars? Well, you go out and you do the races and you win the cars. And so then by the time you've gotten through all of those 39 missions, you've seen pretty much the whole game. I mean, there's a lot of other things out there to do after that, but you've gotten the broad spectrum of like, okay, here's the Japanese compact cars, and here's the high-end race cars, and here's, some other things in between, and license tests and missions and everything else.
Going from Forza Horizon to this has been really interesting, and like they almost perfectly balance out each other. I feel like because Forza Horizon is just so easy breezy. Like I feel like with Forza Horizon, there's like no wrong way to play it. Like like the appeal of it is just how elastic it is and how freeform it is. Whereas in Gran Turismo 7, like. It's not that I expected it, but it was like, oh, right, there's no rewind button. Like, you commit. And I was like, I like that. Again, it's like this nice
You have to go into the options, like I don't think they're called accessibility, but whatever, the assists. You have to go in there and kind of poke around with them a little bit because they're they're not labeled, they're not presented the same way as they are in Forza, which a lot of other games is just sort of like, okay, we're going to take what Forza did and we're going to copy paste it. Like, here's what your driving line looks like. And in Gran Turismo, your driving line looks totally different.
Yeah.
And it doesn't tell you when to brake or anything. You know?
Yeah.
So it's like, there's another thing to give you a brake zone. It's like, oh, okay, cool. I'll do that then. I actually like the little markers for the apex rather than using a driving line. Just like, okay, go from marker to marker. That tells me everything I need to know. And I've been using the brake zone marker just because, like, even though in the past I've just gone off of the gear shifter alert, but it's just like one of those things where it's like it's down there. I have to like look down to see it, and so when the brake zone just right on the track, it's like, okay, it's doing the same thing. It's just in a way that's, you know, not taking away my focus.
That is something that I've noticed, and maybe I'm just not acclimated to it yet, where sometimes I feel like there's almost too much for my eyes to keep track
There
of.
is too much HUD, I think, yeah. And then you can definitely turn some of that stuff off. Even in real time, there's some buttons to swap between some things, which is something that took me a little bit of time, is because one of the things that does actually still bug me a little bit about GT is they don't have any kind of periphery markers. So you can't tell if somebody's like right here in your blind spot. And now if you hit like right on the D-pad, your mini map will turn into like a kind of a close-up radar, so you can see like here's a triangle and there's a triangle. But again, it's all the way down in the corner. So it's like if you're focused and you're trying to not hit that guy, and you don't realize he just snuck up right next to you. Because I've basically done pit maneuvers on myself by like, okay, I'm gonna go, and I hit the front of his car and I spun myself out.
Even just doing like the B license stuff, like the first license stints that you do. With Horizon, it was weird, and maybe I just wasn't messing with the assist enough, but I would be like on intermediate or something, and I'd be like, this is way too easy, and then I would bump it up, and I'd be like, this is way too hard, and it's like, I couldn't find the right balance, and I'm sure if I tweaked it more aggressively, I could, but what I liked about GT7, and like specifically with the license test, why they're so appealing, is it's like, okay, yeah, it's really easy to get like a silver on like your first try, but getting that gold, as somebody who doesn't know a lot about racing, it's almost like a puzzle you have to solve.
Right,
where it's like, okay, how do I do this? Like, how do I brake? How do I slow down? How do I take the turn? And it's just like trial and error, and like the tiniest little thing can make a difference. And it can be frustrating, I think, with the repetition over and over again. But once you sort of figure it out, it's like, okay, I feel like I'm learning more about driving through this 12-second test, you know, in a pretty satisfying
And one
way.
of the things that I think is easy to overlook is the menu before you actually get on track. There is like a demonstration to kind of show you how to do it and give you tips. And I've definitely had times when I've beat my head against the wall. It's like, I just have like 0.2 of a second to shave off on here, and I can't do it. And I go back and I'm like, all right, exit, look at the demonstration. It's like, okay. And then I go in and I get it. It's like, perfect. And so, yeah, that's one of the things I think that GT does really well is, that sense of teaching you how to drive better and pushing you to drive better. Like, another thing I called out in the review that I really love is that you get a 50% bonus for doing a clean race.
Nice.
You know, so not hitting cars, not going wildly off the track.
I thought it was so funny.
And you can bump a little bit, but
that Huber did not get the clean racing bonus. It was just like so perfect.
But some of the things that bug me that are like weird, like, I don't know, like, is this a nitpick? I don't think it's a nitpick, but other people are probably going to look at that review and like, what are you talking about, dude? Every race in the campaign is essentially the same weird structure of you have a long line of cars and you have 2 laps and you have to somehow pass every car. And like, that's not racing. I don't know what that is. But it's like passing an obstacle course. And it's like every race is like that. There's never a race that you just start on a grid like Mario Kart or something. You know, it's like you don't start from standing still. You start from this guy is like a quarter of a lap ahead of you now, you know, figure out how to get there. And as the game goes on, it's like you just get further back and you get more laps to do it. It's just a strange thing to me because it's like it basically makes the other drivers not racers; they're just traffic. It's in a way it's like playing Burnout. You know, it's like I don't want to hit that guy, but I can't get around him.
There was a race that I did, and it was pretty frustrating where, like, I felt like I was racing well, but because, again, like you said, you're going through all these cars, I would get to, like way back in the line, I would get to, like, 10th place, and it's like, I'm going faster, but I feel like I cannot catch up to the other people, and it's like, is that because I'm not racing well enough? Is it because I don't have the right car?
It actually is a mix of it, and I think it's something. I think GT7 does a better job of encouraging you to tune and upgrade, and I think the cafe taking you to the shop and the upgrade shop having all these tooltips and like learn more and finding out what things are about. And
Maybe, yeah, because I haven't done that yet. Maybe
almost every car, like you at least want to go in there and buy racing tires and racing brakes because that'll make so much difference to cornering and acceleration.
Gotcha.
That you can totally do that, and that's that's part of why my criticism with this like catch the leader design is when you get your car to like the recommended performance level, like if say they want you to be at 700.
Yeah.
At 700, you're just blasting by whatever you're competing with, unless you like really put it up to a higher difficulty.
Gotcha.
So, but even then, it's like, I don't know. Do I want to put up to higher difficulty? Because it's not like I'm racing against an AI in the same way. It's just like I'm just trying to get around that guy, or that guy's just like, again, it's just the catch up mentality. It kind of bugs me a little bit. And even when they have dirt races, it's like, oh hey, here's Group B rally cars. We're going to do a rally race? No, we're going to do the same thing. It's just going to be on dirt.
That is super disappointing. I feel like there's been some kerfluffle with the microtransactions.
Yeah.
Why don't you get into that?
Yeah. So I spotted this even during the pre-launch period. And so when you look at your wallet, there's like this little box that pops up on screen. At the bottom, there's a button that says "Top Up on PlayStation Store."
Yeah.
And before launch, you couldn't tell how much that was, and I think it's like $20 for like 2 million credits. But there are I put a car in the review that's 12 million credits.
Jeez.
So that's $120. And here's the thing. Otherwise, I would just say, whatever, ignore it. Like, if you want to be a whale, be a whale.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. Their shops have this, like, weird, like rarity thing. They have, like, this limited stock. So you see in the used shop, things will have limited stock. You'll only see, like, 15 cars in the shop any given day. And so if you don't have the cash, then it's like, well, if I don't get the cash, then somebody else might buy the car. Or there's this other weird system where people will send you invitations to buy specific cars. So like I've gotten like an invitation for a Bugatti Veyron. I got an invitation for something else too. I forget. But you can only buy that car if you have an invitation. And that invitation expires. So after the 15th, I can't buy that Bugatti Veyron. And I need 2 million credits. That's $20. So it's just like putting the pins on you, the pressure to, you've got to do it or you're going to miss it.
It's just so lame because I feel like with Gran Turismo and Gran Turismo 7, it's the $70 game, right? And yeah. I feel like it prides itself on kind of this pristine image, right? Like it really is trying to make racing, like show you the wonders of racing and show how like just clean and cool it can be. And so to have these microtransactions and then to like prey on FOMO, I feel like the way that they're doing it just feels cheap in a way that really clashes with so many other elements of the presentation.
Yeah, and the other aspect of it that bugs me that I didn't bring up in the review is that the shops don't have any kind of test drive feature, right? So you have these like crazy expensive cars, and like when you get into like Group 3 races at the like pretty much the end of the campaign, it's like, okay, I've got to buy a Group 3 car because I don't have any yet. And like the cheapest ones, I think, are like 300,000 or 350,000 credits. Most of them are around like 450,000 to 500,000 range. And you're just kind of like making a bet that you're gonna like the way this car handles.
Yeah, that sucks for sure, especially if they're going to charge so much. Yeah.
So, out of curiosity, as someone who knows virtually nothing about Gran Turismo 7 and how all this car buying stuff works, like, are the cars that you buy for that much money, are they, like, exceptionally good cars? Like, can you use them in a race? Is it, like, a pay-to-win kind of thing online, or?
No, because online stuff is...
Separate?
Yeah, well, you do have to, like, buy your own cars and stuff for a lot of it and tune them and everything. But they usually have specific restrictions. So, like, there's one the other day that was, like, has to be under 174 horsepower, that kind of thing. But, yeah, it's a mix of things. It's sort of based on real-world rarity. So, like, that $12 million one I was talking about, like, that's, like, a classic Jaguar race car. There's maybe, a couple dozen at most that they ever produced. And so it's kind of that, there's, like, the historical prestige to it.
So it's really like a collector kind of.
Yeah, it's a collector mentality, and it's absent of microtransactions, it wouldn't necessarily be that big of a deal. But when you can now, like, put a real price tag on it rather than just grinding it out. And I also suspect that this is the real reason that they don't allow you to play offline. Because, like, they're concerned about cheaters. Well, why are they concerned about cheaters? Well, because they're concerned that people are going to find a way to pump up their credits and not spend them in the store.
Makes sense.
Would you recommend Gran Turismo 7 for somebody looking to get more involved in, like, racing games or just racing in general?
Yeah, I mean, it really... Like, you have to know what you're getting into, right? Like, you have to know that this is a game where you're going to put in practice and you're going to try over and over again and you're going to, like, shave off those...
It's a commitment.
0.001s of a second. So it's not cruising. It's not, open world game. But like I said, I think it does a really good job of teaching you the ropes, letting you get acclimated, giving you tools to, interact with that the way that you want. And so if you want to, like, learn how to drive better and, get into, like, a track-based racing experience, like, that's really where, like, the game shines and the game is at the top of its class, is just that interaction of your car with the road. And so that's why, even if, like, the AI doesn't matter or they don't have a lot of different structures to the events, it's like, no, like, this is cool just because I'm on a different car on a different track, and there's a lot of cars on a lot of tracks, and so there's just a lot to dig into there.
I think that was really well said. Look forward to that review. Should be coming.
Yeah, it'll probably be up around the time as this.
This is public.
Don's working on it right now.
Okay, yeah. Look forward to that. Mitch, one of the games that you're talking about, I am so curious about for a number of reasons. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to play the latest demo, but I played the demo before that, I believed, and really liked it. And so I'm curious to see how the final build turned out of Stranger of Paradise Final Fantasy Origin.
Oh, you mean Kill Chaos the game?
Yeah, Kill Chaos the game. Does it live up to the memes?
Oh, man. It's such a weird game, guys.
That's exactly what I wanted to hear. That's exactly how I wanted you to open this segment.
It's such a weird game. I don't know if you guys have seen, like, the clip that's being passed around of how they meet.
No. Just like the party?
How the party meets.
Okay.
It's literally Jack walking into town, the other two, Jed and Ash, walking behind him. Jack turns around. And they hold out their black crystals. Jack's like, holds out his crystal. And they're like, oh, we got one too. All I know is I want to kill Chaos. And they're like, all right, fist bump. And then that's it. That's how they meet.
That sounds like a bad English dub of, like, an old anime. You know what I mean? Like yeah. That's
the way you describe
they
the
figured
crystals,
it out.
it makes me feel like you've gotten an invitation to some gala or something.
So it's kind of nonsense. There is kind of like a underlying mystery that's slowly starting to unravel that kind of justifies some of the weirdness. I haven't gotten to the end yet, so I can't say if it's fully there yet. But the dialogue is just so bad.
But okay, maybe I'm being too generous here, but is it so bad that it's good, or is it bad that it's just boring and you don't care?
I would say at the beginning, before the novelty wears off, it's in that so bad that it's good territory.
Gotcha.
The problem is, and let me be clear, I like this game. I do like this game from a combat, from a gameplay perspective, and just a general fact of me being a huge Team Ninja fan.
Yeah.
But usually when you have a game that's built around this party and like the bonds that you have, generally you have more substantial conversations between each other than, oh look, there's crystals, or hey, we've been down there before. Isn't that crazy? It's just like, pointing out the most mundane things over and over and over again. That's like the limit of like how much they interact with each other.
Well, it's interesting that this game is based on Final Fantasy 1, because you think about Final Fantasy 1, the party doesn't have any interaction with each other. And so like that's a way that you could go, but it feels like they're trying to have interaction, but like it's bad.
Yeah, and like the way you talk to people in town is in between each mission. You can go to Cornelia, like the kingdom, and they have a whole list of NPCs that you just select from a menu. And then when you select them, it just goes to a static background with the character. They say one line, and then it boots you back out to the menu. That's it. And like they're never anything of substance. Just like, man, I sure hope you come back safely, and then back to the menu.
I have to know, have you gotten to a canoe yet?
A canoe?
Remember the canoe in the original?
Oh, I see. I didn't play it. I played maybe the first 30, 40 minutes of Final Fantasy 1. So I unfortunately don't know.
Getting into the combat for people who aren't familiar, right? So this is a Souls-like kind of game, but what really separates it? How is combat?
So combat's really fun. I think what really separates this game from anything else, and like even separating it from Neo, because I think on a fundamental level it feels very much like Neo. But the big thing is the job system. And I feel like job systems are almost like grappling hooks. Like even a bad job or like a mediocre job system will still elevate a game. Mm-hmm. So yeah, the job system is actually really good. It's the kind of thing where you start off with 3 jobs. You basically have your swordsman, you have like a pugilist, which means you use your fists, and then you have like a mage. Mm-hmm. And from there you can basically choose skills on a skill tree and get down to the next job, and then as a typical job system, then you start from scratch on that job tree. And every job has its own command abilities. It has its own stat update or upgrades that it gives you. It has there's some combo moves that you can add in. So like if you do light attack, heavy attack, it'll do a specific special move that is unique to that job. So yeah, it's like the job system is awesome. It's really fun to experiment with different jobs and see how it changes. Every job also has like its own like move that you just hit from R2 and without pressing any other buttons. So like for example, the thief will steal the command ability from any enemy that you fight.
Important question.
Yeah.
Are there like exclusive items and or weapons that you can get from bosses?
Ooh, you mean like a boss weapon?
Yeah, and then steal.
No, I
That would be
don't
pretty
think so.
sick.
So you don't actually steal weapons; you steal abilities.
Okay. Oh, okay.
Yeah. So like for example, if you have a bomb and you use the steal on it, you'll steal the fire spell, and then you can just throw the fire spell without using any mana.
But it would be really funny if you stole self-destruct and then just died. Yeah.
That would be awesome.
Oh, man.
Well, what's really cool is that you can steal fire from a bomb, throw 3 fireballs at it, and then it self-destructs.
Oh,
so
okay.
that's the kind of like, cool, those are like some of the cool interactions that you can have with the enemies and the other different systems that you have. Like there's all kinds of environmental interactions that you can have. And also, it's just really cool to like fight a Tonberry in a like action game kind of setting.
Yeah.
And they're crazy, man. The Tonberries in this game are scary as hell.
Do they just like slowly?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Great.
So what's cool about the Tonberries is that they move super slowly, but they cast these crazy spells that paralyze you, and if you get hit, it'll teleport right to you, and they'll do chef's knife.
Nice. With the job system, a couple of questions. Are there, like, let's say you spend a lot of time with a job. Does it ever get to a point where it's like, okay, you've like mastered this job, you can do this job skill while you have another job equipped?
Yeah.
Okay, so it does have that.
Yeah, so it has kind of like a it almost like groups them into like, these are like the brutish jobs, these are the agility based jobs, and these are kind of like the magic based jobs. And there's definitely crossover between some of them. Like, when you go from a thief to a ninja, you still have some of those ninja abilities that you can equip if you've unlocked them.
Gotcha.
And those are still super helpful. Or if you're playing as a black mage and you go to a red mage is basically a black mage, but they can do the like chain spells, so they can keep on throwing fire spells until they run out of MP. So again, like the
Does
job
the red
system
mage have a sick ass hat? Is an important question.
You know what's funny? So the bad thing about this game is that the gear system is basically the same as Neo, which means you just drown in loot.
Oh,
you
boy.
literally, from start to end, almost any level, you have like 100 pieces of new loot that you're gonna have to sort through by the time you beat that level.
The thing I will say in Neo's defense is I do think it goes too hard on the loot, but at least it made like dismantling that loot worthwhile. Is that the same kind of philosophy? Damn.
Not really.
Okay.
You can dismantle loot and you can craft other things, but it's not on the same level as Neo. But the point I was getting to was like, so what I basically do, I don't want to spend 20 hours in menus, carefully choosing every single thing. So what I do is there's an optimize button. So I just press, whenever I get like a bunch of new loot that's better than my stuff, the stuff that I have right now, I just go to the menu, hit optimize. And like for half the game, I was just using like a ninja who had like a fedora.
Nice.
Like that was my ninja. He just a cool fedora wearing ninja.
Is the gear kind of boring like that, where it's really just about numbers? Is there ever like any decision you have to make where it's like, okay, well the numbers here are worse, but it has like cool skills or like augments me?
There's definitely that element. Some later or higher level gear will give you special abilities that you can't really get anywhere else, or if you can, like you would have to get them from like another skill tree or something like that. So you can equip a piece of gear, it gives you like a really cool special ability. You might want to hold on to it because you've grown really accustomed to that ability.
Sick.
But then, the thing comes around where it's like, okay, now I'm starting to, feel the lack of power on my gear.
Right.
I have to get rid of this cool thing.
Can you do like any sort of like skill inheritance?
Not that I've seen. I haven't like dug that deep into it. You might be able to. I'd imagine you can, because you can definitely do that in Neo. But I haven't dug deep enough into it.
Gotcha.
I unfortunately was not reviewing this game because I was reviewing WWE.
Which does not suck this year, according to you.
Does not suck this year.
Nice.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Yeah, is the level design kind of like?
It's okay.
Is it like like chapter by chapter, or is there like something that connects everything?
It's structured almost exactly like Neo. So when you get a new level, that level will also come with its set of like side missions, and the side missions are basically like start at the end of the level, go back to the beginning, and kill 5 of these monsters.
Right. Okay.
So it reuses its levels a lot.
Yeah, boy, I don't know that I like hearing that because I think that's something that is a fault of Neo, where like there's too many side missions, and like you get to a point by the end of like those very long games where you're like, I feel like I've just seen way too much of the same thing.
Right.
So I am worried about that.
Well, also too, like the original Final Fantasy, like that was a game about exploration. It's like that's like you go into a town. You try to talk to everyone to figure like, where do I go now? They're like, oh, the cave to the north. I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
But if it's all just sort of like, okay, next chapter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's kind of one of my disappointments also with it. the problem with having so much loot is that finding loot in a level doesn't feel special anymore.
Yeah.
When an enemy drops, just as good loot as I can find in a chest, I'm not going to go out of my way to look for every chest in a level because, like I already got enough loot and everything is already, I'm getting everything I need from just, breaking open these pinata enemies.
Mm-hmm. Man, to compare that to Elden Ring, I think Elden Ring does loot like so wonderfully well, which is even more impressive considering how wide the world is. And it's not like everywhere you go, you get something crazy, but I feel like good loot is spaced out far enough, and I never know exactly where it's going to come from, that when you see like that purple line going up, you're like, I need to get that, and it makes loot exciting.
What I will say about the system, and again, this is also kind of how Nioh was. The loot system, I feel like, is designed specifically for the player who is going to play this game far into the post game, because once you do get to that point where like you have the gear that you want, then you can start thinking about the affinity levels that you want to get. So there's an affinity system where if you equip a bunch of gear that's all of a certain affinity, you basically unlock like a progressively more powerful buff. So let's say like I have 200% thief affinity on my gear, then like I can go all the way down the thief buff list and have something really powerful by the time I get to the end.
Cool.
So there's definitely that reward for managing your gear and really thinking about what kind of build you want to make. But that doesn't come into play until you're at least like 30 hours in. And I'm probably about like 20 hours right now. I feel like I'm 3 missions away from beating the game, and I'm still just, picking up something. If I see an arrow go up, go to the menu, press the optimize button, get back in the game. Yeah. Because otherwise I'm just spending way too much time in menus, and I'm not having fun.
Yeah. No, you spend a lot of time in menus in Nioh. But going back to the job system, I worry that the job system is going to it's going to be a pain to level up a bunch of things, or like that. I guess how does the progression work? Do you feel like you can experiment and change jobs regularly and progress at a pretty good pace, or is it really a grind?
No, I've never felt like it was a grind. So I basically decided early on that I went down the mage path. And then I went to Black Mage, and then I went to Sage. Sage basically allows you to combine Black Mage and White Mage and switch between the spells at the press of a button. And it's actually, again, like these jobs are so cool. There's an extra element to it where if you cast three Black Mage spells and then 3 White Mage spells without switching between the jobs, because you can switch between your 2 equipped jobs with the press of a button. If you get 3 tokens for both Black and White Magic, you get to cast Ultima. And Ultima is like, such a badass spell. Like almost nukes a boss, like half of a boss's life.
Sick.
It's so cool. So I went all the way down that path. I got Sage to max level, and then I went down the agility base class, and I got to Ninja, and I got Ninja to max level. And Ninja is basically like you have like a separate resource tied to ninjutsu. So like I have 20, scrolls, let's say, and I can bring up a wheel of ninjutsu spells, and they're like weaker magic spells, but they cost no mana to use. You can cast them super fast, and it's just like, one of those things where you can cast them outside of your mana supply. So I can exhaust all my Black Mage spells, and then exhaust all my ninjutsus, and that's a dead enemy.
Can you do moves from Ninja Gaiden?
Heartbreakingly, no. Okay. None that I've noticed. There's no Izuna drop.
I feel like it sounds like it carries over so many of the great aspects of Nioh, because I feel like we've kind of been a little bit down on Nioh, but I think something that Nioh
for the record, I gave Nioh like a 9.5 on IGN.
They're great games.
Nioh 2 like a 9.5. One of my highest scores I've given.
Yeah, they're great games, and part of what makes them great is the combat is so brilliant. And it sounds like some of those elements are carried over here. The other thing about Neo, though, is it has some incredible boss fights.
Yeah.
And Neo is a brutally difficult game in a lot of ways. How do the boss fights compare, and then how does the difficulty compare?
They're pretty good. They're mechanically interesting, and what I really like about it is if you know, they're almost always 2-phase affairs. If you get to like the second phase and then you die, you'll see like these two little, you know, essences that you can absorb, and they'll give you tips on you know, what you should do against this boss if you're having trouble.
Nice.
So yeah, like as far as like the mechanically, I think the bosses are really interesting. There's like one that people might be familiar from the demo. It's basically like this giant elemental ball that has like a water elemental and a fire elemental that both go out like alternatingly, and sometimes they come out together. So you have to mix up what is weak against what, and you know, you have to take care to note each of their attacks to know how to dodge them, because this is a very defensive oriented game. I don't know. I haven't even gone over like the soul break system, which is kind of like the big thing in this game. So you have like this break meter at the bottom, and you have, you know, basically a soul shield that you can just put out, and it's like a parry where, you know, if someone hits you when you have it out, they'll recoil, but there's no real timing element to it. It's just a meter that quickly, you know, decreases the longer you hold it out. And if it goes all the way to the bottom and, you know, breaks, then, you know, you recoil and you have to wait until, you know, it goes back up before you can move again. So there's like this really interesting push and pull of like, do I, you know, try to avoid an attack to preserve my break gauge? Do I try to like just do a regular block, which will deal me some damage, but I won't take as much break damage? Or do I just go straight up soul shield and, you know, try to manage my meter so it doesn't break? So there's so many really good combat considerations to this game.
Cool.
And I got on a tangent and don't remember what the initial question was.
Difficulty.
Yeah. I feel like when I first played this demo, it was tuned really, really difficultly. It was like really, really difficult. I'm not sure if that's because the demo was, you know, scaled up to like, you know, expert level.
Sure.
But what's nice about it is that there's 3 difficulties. There's, you know, story, there's action, and then there's, you know, a hard mode. So you can kind of tune that the way you want, and you can change it at the beginning of every mission.
Oh, nice.
So yeah, it's been pretty. You know, I wouldn't say it's easy, but you know, it's definitely been manageable on the action difficulty level. I could probably bump it up higher, but you know, I'm having a good time on action so far.
Yeah, it's so weird because with this and Elden Ring being kind of right on top of each other, there are definitely moments in Elden Ring where it's like, okay, this is ripping me a new asshole. So
Yeah.
having it still be challenging while not maybe being quite that level sounds kind of appealing at this moment, for sure. Awesome. Man, it sounds sick. I really, really want to play it. How are you mentioned it being chapter-based, but like, are the levels interesting to go through? Like, visually, are they cool? Do you feel like the design of things is neat, that you have interesting challenges?
It's definitely, you know, it varies. There are definitely some really great moments where like you go through like a cave and there's all kinds of crazy like glowing coral on the walls and stuff like that. You go through a lot of caverns in this game, and a lot of the caverns look very similar. But then there are moments where like you get out of the cavern and you just get like this really cool vista. Cool. So, you know, it's not the best I've ever seen. It's also not the worst. It could definitely do with a little more variation between its, you know, indoor settings, I would say.
Gotcha.
And I realized I didn't really go over the boss battles all that much, but they're really good. I think. Also, what I didn't even say is that you can do all this co-op. So, if you're struggling with something, then you can just bring in a buddy.
Is it like a Souls, like there's signs down and you hit them, or do you just directly invite somebody?
Straight up. Create a lobby, get someone in.
I think that's how Neo handles it as well. Yeah. So, cool. I am super stoked about Triangle Strategy, to talk about that.
Nice, yeah.
I'm like, I think 13 and a half, 14 hours in, something like that. I took a turn on this game where, like, the prologue took me forever to get through because I liked it, but everything just felt very slow. Make no mistake, this is a dense game. Like, it's like, okay, you are going to learn about all of these characters, all of these nations, their past war history, how that's being applied to right now, what everybody's going through, all these different houses. It is extremely dense, and the prologue has a ton of setup. And so I was talking to Isla about it, maybe on the last Frame Trap even, where it would be like, I would like do a section and I'd be like, okay, like I'm full, right? Like that's enough. Cause you would be like, I'm going through all of these dialogue scenes and then it's like, maybe I get a little quick battle and then I'm done.
Oh yeah, that can be really rough.
Yeah.
Like, what do you feel like you forget how to play the game at the beginning?
Yeah, so I liked it, but I hit this turning point with Triangle Strategy, and I don't want to spoil anything, but it kind of like shit kind of hits the fan, and at least where I am right now, it's like, okay, we're going. And you get to this point where you're really, despite it being slow and despite it kind of taking a while to get to this point, you're really grateful for when that happens because the stakes feel so incredibly high and you have such a thorough understanding of what's going on. I feel like Triangle Strategy is one of the best developed new worlds that I've seen in a really long time. Like there's like everything is just so thought out and like every culture feels like it's touched upon in an interesting way where it doesn't overdo it, but everything like really has a, like, it's just so cohesive. And like I said, once things kind of go, it really doesn't pull its punches emotionally. I feel like you get into a battle and you're like, this feels like a climactic battle. Like what I'm doing has huge consequence and stakes. And that gets me to one of my favorite things is the scales of conviction system. And so one of my most frustrating, they're completely different games, but one of my most frustrating aspects of Dying Light 2 is that I got to this point where I'm like, I feel like my decisions don't matter at all. And like maybe they do technically, like if I go through and be like, okay, this is different or whatever, but the game didn't do a good job making me feel that in the moment. The choices felt pretty inconsequential. I don't feel that way here, and you're not making like huge decisions all the time, but I've had two scales of convention things, and the first one was like, do you want to go to this place or do you want to go to this place? And it's like, wow, that's actually like a huge thing because I'm going on a diplomatic mission, right? And I picked S-Frost. And I got to learn all about S-Frost, got to go into its history, and it's like, I just don't get that with this other place at all. And then, like, the next choice I made, which I don't want to spoil, it was like, I'm dealing with, like, the fate of somebody's life, right? And I think what gives the decisions an extra layer is when you're doing them, it's not like just you're making the decision, or it's not just like Sarah Noah as the main character is making the decision. It's like, okay, everybody has a voice here. My party is like, okay, 3 of them are on this side of the issue, 3 of them are on the other side of the issue, and then like 1 is undecided. And so then what you'll go is you'll go and you'll talk to them. And if you want to swing things a particular way, you'll try to argue for that, where it's like, hey, I really want to do this. And sometimes what you need to get leverage is you need to go out and explore the town and talk to everybody, and then they'll give you a new piece of information that you can use in your negotiations. And so, you know, it's not just a binary like, oh, do you want to do this or do you want to do that? Like, you really feel like you kind of have to get into the issue and explore multiple facets of it and have a really good understanding of it when you do it. And just because you get this new information doesn't mean that, like, they're going to join your side. Like, there have been a couple of times where I'm like, hey, I really want you to do this. And they're like, they're not convinced by your argument. And so that's pretty cool. I have had both things swing in my favor, though. And so I wonder if I'll have a scales of conviction moment where I want to go one way, but everybody's like, no, we're doing the other thing, which would be really interesting. But yeah.
How deeply do those choices impact your relationship with those characters when you do something that 3 of your characters weren't for?
Yeah.
Does it does it cause friction between the characters? Can they leave your party or?
I haven't had that. I haven't had someone be like, "Oh, I'm gonna leave your encampment," or "I don't want to be part of your house's House Wolf War." I haven't had that. And I think part of the reason is the framing of the story is yes, everybody has a voice, and yes, we're gonna go with the majority, but you are still lord of this house, right?
Yeah.
You still have the highest authority. So I may disagree with you with what you're doing, but at the same time, I also trust in your leadership. So they kind of frame it that way, where it makes sense contextually.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I really want to get into Triangle Strategy. I've been going nonstop for
Right.
for a couple of months now.
Yeah, for sure.
Looking forward to checking it out though.
Yeah. It visually it sort of has the same style as Octopath Traveler, but I'm as of right now, I like it so much more than Octopath Traveler, and I liked Octopath Traveler, but I kind of got into this thing with Octopath Traveler where man, I don't care about these stories or these characters that much. I feel kind of this very shallow connection with them. Love the combat, and obviously love it visually, but here I am so engrossed and invested in the story, and it feels really well told. It's not even that it's not even this ultra unique, crazy story. I think it's just executed so well. And part of the reason for that is you have this huge map, right? And you'll have these red dots, and it'll be this is a main story event, and you'll do that main story event, and then it's here are these optional scenes that you can see. And what's cool about the optional scenes is it will allow you to get a completely different perspective, maybe halfway across the map, where it's okay, how does this house feeling about it, or what's the royal family thinking about right now? And it again, it just feels so full and so well thought out. Where not only do you have this main story going on, but you're seeing how different parts of the world are reacting to it. And again, that's what makes it feel just so well thought out and well executed. And what's great is when you do these optional scenes, I feel for the most part they're really, really short, where it's just we're just gonna check in and then we're out. It's not you do these and you're bogged down in tons and tons and tons of dialogue. They have the good sense to kind of keep that stuff moving, which is cool. And I haven't even talked about the combat, which is great. It's cool because I feel it strikes a good line between being challenging and interesting, but not being crazy. And so with the demo, the prologue demo, you could carry over progress, and the max level you could get in the demo was level 5. And I was well, I might as well just grind and get to level 5 and carry over progress. That doesn't seem like it would be too overpowered. And there are these mental mock battles that you can do, which will give you rewards and help give your characters additional experience outside of the big main battles. And what I like about them is I feel I couldn't really abuse them. On stream, I did a few of those battles, and it kind of got to diminishing returns, where I'm I'm not really getting that much experience. I don't feel I can really use these to grind. And just before I came out to do the show, I did a battle, and I was under-leveled. It was recommending level 11, and a lot of my units were level 9 or below. I think I had one level 10. And so I was how is this going to feel? Am I going to get absolutely crushed? Do I really need to grind out these couple of levels? And it's no. I just played, decently enough that the tactics that I were using was more important than the raw numbers. And I feel it really tries to emphasize how well you play with this currency system, where it's okay, if you have 2 characters flank a person, they'll get a follow-up attack, and you'll get a reward for that. If you do a backstab, you'll get a reward from that. If you attack from a safe spot, from a high ground, you'll get a reward from that. And so there are all these things that help out with that. And then that's currency that you can use to buy special items. And so it's oh, I want to do well. I want to understand the mechanics of this game and utilize them so I can buy these things. They're like powers that you can use. I forget what they're called, but like you can heal a unit or guarantee a critical hit, and I always forget to use them. Like I have them, or I at least have one, but I always forget to use them in the battle, which is kind of frustrating. There isn't a job system. Isla has asked me about that, and I feel like that could be a negative for some people, but I think that the characters are all like pretty well defined and interesting that it hasn't bothered me. I feel like they all have sufficient strengths and weaknesses.
Is there like good progression of their skills if there's not a job system? Like, do you level up in this game?
Yeah, you level up. Yep. You level up, and then as you level up, you'll get new abilities, and then like once you hit level 10, it's like, oh, I can promote my unit to the next tier. But to do that, I have to have this special item, right? And so it's like I can't do it to everybody immediately. I have to make sure I have this medal of bravery going forth. But yeah, I worry and suspect that because there's so many great things coming out and so many big games like Elden Ring and Horizon and even like Gran Turismo 7, I feel like triangle strategy is kind of getting slept on.
Right.
And like, I think it's much better than people realize. And I almost feel like maybe the prologue is working against it because it's like, this is like the slowest and most boring part of the game. But if you like keep pushing past that, it gets pretty amazing. Like I'm super high on this game. Like I think it's really good. It does take patience. It is a commitment. But yeah, it's good. Like I know like Fire Emblem is so popular and so beloved, and I feel like in a lot of ways this meets that level of quality, which is really cool.
Nice.
Check it out. It is time for the sizzle. Mitch, have you seen The Batman?
I have not.
Do you have any interest in it?
Yeah,
Okay.
actually, I'm planning on seeing it with my wife and a couple of her friends at like a drive-in. Actually,
Nice.
Nice.
So,
Never been to a drive-in.
Yeah,
Cool. Well, this is inspired by The Batman. Go check out our spoiler mode. It was myself, Damiani, Huber, and Isla. It was a super fun discussion. I had a great time. We all had a great time, I think, because we love that movie. But this is inspired by that. Who is your favorite live-action Batman?
Oh, wow.
I mean, for me, it's got to go to the Batman that I think was in the best movies, and for me, that's Christian Bale.
Yeah.
Also, I think that was like a really good change coming from like the Joel Schumacher Batman movies, like just that like contrast between the Batman from those movies and like the Batman that we got in God, I forgot what the first one was called. Dark Knight Returns.
Oh, Batman Begins?
Batman Begins.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just like that contrast between those two Batmans. It really like sold me on like this is how like a Batman movie can and should be. And then going to Dark Knight, which I just think is one of the best superhero movies of all time.
It is incredible.
Yeah. For me, it's Christian Bale.
Nice. Blood, you undecided?
Yeah, it's weird because it's like when I think of the one that like really sticks out as my favorite, it actually would be the animated series.
Yeah, that's the real answer. Is
When it really
Kevin
comes
Conroy
down
is,
to it.
Yeah, Kevin Conroy is
like,
my favorite as well.
Every other one is like there's something that just feels
Yeah.
a little bit off
Yeah,
here.
no, I do.
Yeah.
I feel like Kevin Conroy just crushes it. But
Because
yeah,
I think like the Michael Keaton Bruce Wayne is really good, but I don't like the Christian Bale Bruce Wayne. And Robin Pattinson, like it's weird. Like I like that movie, but like I'm not sure like how I feel about anyone as a specific character. Like when I just put them in like in a bubble, and like I don't know if I like that exactly. Like I don't know if I like Riddler exactly, but somehow as a movie, like the whole thing just works.
yeah.
Yeah.
It could be the honeymoon phase for me, and like I'd be interested in revisiting this like a year from now.
It's Pattinson?
I think it's Pattinson.
Wow.
I think it is. I think
It's a really good arc there to his character. That's for sure.
There's an amazing arc to his character, and it definitely feels different than I expected the Batman to feel. There's the qualities that he has and the ways that he expresses himself is very unique and fresh. But I think as a performance, I think he really crushes it. Not only just like in the more like subdued dialogue scenes, but in the action scenes as well. I think he really brings a viciousness.
I got that from the trailer.
Yeah, I think that really pushes him over the edge to me. I also think he does a great job of interacting with Selena Kyle. We really don't get a lot of him as Bruce Wayne, and so I can't even really incorporate the Bruce Wayne element of it in it. But
Right.
yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I think maybe the difference to me in a way is, compared to Christian Bale and Robert Pattinson, I feel like Michael Keaton and Kevin Conroy, like there's more of a maturity to Batman in those instances. It's like the Batman, he's a detective, he knows what he's doing, he's got his act together. Whereas like these guys are still sort of in crisis mode.
Yeah.
They're still just like, I'm so screwed up, I'm so freaked out, I'm just gonna go out there and do what I can.
Yeah.
Whereas like no, like Kevin Conroy is in control.
Yes.
Like, he has times when he struggles with things. It's not like one note.
Right.
But he's established himself really well.
That's what I'm interested to see about Pattinson. As this continues, is
the next movie.
Is he gonna? How well is that transition gonna go from less experienced to more experienced? And how will he be able to handle that? I'm very curious. That movie is great. You're in for a good time.
I can't wait. I'm really excited. I've actually heard like surprisingly mixed things about it for the most part.
Really?
But like it's almost like opposite ends of the spectrum. Like this is the greatest Batman movie I've ever seen. Batman was trash. So
really,
I'm really interested to see
Pretty
where
crazy
I fall
car
on it.
chase.
Yeah.
Oh, the car is amazing. I guess I haven't really been paying that much attention to the online conversation. I didn't realize there was this backlash.
And I don't know if it's like, the Reddit, the consensus. It's just like, people that I follow on Twitter who have like posted their hot takes. So.
Huh. Yeah, I
would say
it.
more
I
people,
can't imagine
more people
not
like
love
it than not.
Yeah. I almost never go see a movie twice in the theater. I would love to see this again. Yeah. But I also fucking adore Batman, like to a point where like maybe that's coloring my perception of things. I don't know. Just out of curiosity, Mitch, what's your favorite superhero?
Spider-Man.
It's a good choice.
Yeah. I was a junior counselor at a summer camp, and my camp name was Spidey.
Nice. That's sick. This sizzle is brought to you by some wonderful shout-out tier patrons. For this one, I thought we would do a Batman voice. Seems appropriate. Actually, I have written down here Stranger of Paradise. If you want to do like a chaos thing. I don't know what would be more interesting.
I feel like it's the same.
Okay, so do Batman or Stranger of Paradise. Once I get done reading all these names, shout out to Elthanas, Greg the Dark Knight Kettering, Caleb Togi Crawford, Nick, Raymond Wheeler III, and ZatVunDoot.
Shout out. Swear to me.
I'm vengeance.
ZatVunDoot is the
ZatVunDoot?
one, like a W sound rather than a V sound, even though it's
My bad.
Yeah. That one's throwing me for a loop, for sure. When even like he put the explanation and like, really? Okay.
That's fun to say. Man, there are lines in the Batman that I feel like should be horrible, but I feel like they're delivered well enough in context where I'm like, yeah, that worked. Kind of like you were saying, where it's like, somehow this works. Blood, you've been playing Asura's Wrath on Blood Pact, and that is a game I have a tremendous fondness for, but I feel like it's also been like so incredibly long since I've played it, so I'm curious how it holds up.
Speaking of angry boys, number one angry boy.
Yeah, that's for sure true.
Yeah, I've definitely, again, like if people have watched like all of our stuff, I'm probably going to repeat myself a bit, but it's the thing that like stuck out to me the most is like you hear all the time, people talk about like, oh yeah, it's like playing an anime or whatever.
Yeah.
And like sure, like that makes sense to me, just like from a distance, like yeah, it's like playing an anime, like it's Naruto team, all that stuff. Sure. Mm-hmm. it wasn't until I actually got into this.
Yeah.
I've been like, oh my gosh, they just emulated every single beat.
Next
from an
episode previews.
Anime episode.
Title cards.
It's
The
like
commercial
eye-catches.
breaks, like just everything. They're like repeating scenes when a new chapter starts.
So good. I love it.
Oh yeah, and it's got some gigantic scale. I knew about the gigantic scale before because I had done previews and stuff for it. But yeah, just
oh man, does it have scale? Holy shit! Yeah.
but just yeah, like this, like the fact that like tens of thousands of years pass between one chapter and another.
Yeah.
Like you still fight when you're like your arms have been ripped off. I'm like, yeah, I'm just gonna headbutt now. That's fine.
I remember the combat, like in the more brawly, like just fighting a bunch of dudes combat being like the most forgettable part of that entire game.
Yeah, I wouldn't say the most forgettable. The most forgettable to me is like the kind of like shooting gallery thing where you're just kind of like spamming the screen and
That's
like waiting
fair.
for lockdowns.
Yeah.
So like the regular combat, it's just like it's all right. Like it's the good thing is it's like it's not too challenging, so you can't get that annoyed with it. It is really just like a popcorn kind of game.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like, okay, yeah, hit this, okay, watch for the counter, and then yeah, you like so you kind of learn some tells, you kind of dodge out of the way here and there, and there's a couple of points when like, okay, there's a boss battle where I got to take a couple of tries, but most of the time it's just, you're just watching. It's like,
Yeah.
You're just like waiting, and like you get that burst, and it's like yes. And it's funny because like I know like the QuickTime events for like one of the things that is criticized because you spend so much time in cutscenes and doing
feel
QuickTime
like-
events, but it's just like this is all it like actually feels like
The
reward in
quick
this
time
game.
events are honestly like my favorite part of that game.
Yeah.
Yeah. Are you outside of the ridiculousness, because the game is very ridiculous, are you finding yourself like invested in the story?
Yeah. I mean, you kind of, yeah, just seeing where things like it's like total filler popcorn kind of thing, but it's I didn't go into that first stream thinking that I was gonna do a full playthrough. I was like, oh yeah, here's a thing I haven't played, just been sitting on my shelf.
Yeah.
And then once I got done with that first 3 hours, I'm like, well, how long is this game? I think we can do this. I think we can figure this out.
I don't think it's that long.
Yeah.
Make sure you do the DLC.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I did download the DLC,
Okay.
which is
The Akuma one?
this is a process
Well,
now.
there's that. No, but like the DLC like finishes
Yeah,
the
There's
story.
finishes
another,
the story, yeah.
basically another like
Pretty controversial
quarter
back
of
in
the
day.
game. Yeah.
As it should be. That's bullshit.
But
yeah.
this is one of the hilarious things you have to do now with the PS3 because they've shut off credit card payments.
Oh man.
So you have to go to the PlayStation Store on the PC. Well, first you have to go to the PS3, check the price. Then go to the store on the PC, on the browser, load in that amount of money into your wallet, and then you can buy with the wallet currency. Yeah.
You can't load on the PS3 itself. You have to do it on the PC store.
Right. Yeah, because they've shut off
Damn.
credit cards.
Because I need to. That store that's closing down in like May, right?
No, I think they reversed
they've extended
closing
it.
down thing, but they did turn off credit cards.
Because
yeah.
I need to make sure.
You're thinking of the Switch, or no, not Switch, the Wii U and the 3DS,
3DS,
that
okay.
are those are going to start losing payments.
I love the PS1 and PS2 classics so much. At some point
Yeah.
I need to make sure, like, because I've gotten a lot of them, but I need to make sure, like, okay, do I have everything that I want from
Third
this?
Strike. You got to get Marvel vs. Capcom 2.
Well, see, that's the other thing.
I've
That's
used
the
two
other
on
annoying
Xbox,
side of
yeah.
the process is
Yeah.
because you can't just buy it on the browser because they don't list the PS3 games on the browser.
Yeah,
So you
yeah,
have
which
to-
is super annoying.
You
yeah.
have to load the money and then go to the PS3 and then download the game.
And the PS3 store is so slow and bad, and yeah, it's not.
It was
great.
really funny getting back into that and trying to remember what the whole process is, the interface, because like even when you say download in background, it doesn't actually download in background. Because I bought the DLC and then I did a whole stream and then like it said like 17% downloaded and I'm like, oh, so I guess you haven't been doing this. Well, I played the game.
Well, and then the PS3 does that weird thing where it's like if you download it in the background, it's still a bubble that you have to install.
Right, you have to install it afterwards. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad We've improved some things since the PS3 days, man.
We've come a long way.
Holy cow. Yeah, how far are you in Asura's Wrath at the moment?
I think I just have a couple of chapters left in the base game, and then it's on to the DLC.
I feel like this is a game that was criminally overlooked, and it's definitely one that I would love to see just a re-release for, just to get more people's eyeballs on it.
It runs bad.
Oh boy,
it's like screen tearing to the max, and the frame rate is not great.
I do remember the frame rate not being great.
I played it on 360, and I don't remember.
I think the 360 might actually be a better version, but I don't know for sure.
I don't remember, but I could just be forgetting. It's been ages.
I haven't seen that much screen tearing in a console game in a long time.
Oh boy. And you can't just like turn on VSync. Yeah. Capcom, come on. Re-release that game.
God, I remember I did an interview with one of the directors at CyberConnect 2, and I told him how much of a fan of Asura's Wrath I was, and he was like, it was like almost heartbreaking. It was like, oh, not many other people were. I'm like, oh no, please, like do something else that you like. I know that they're really good at doing these licensed anime games. Like the Demon Slayer game is great. The Naruto games are great. They're the masters. I always say this. They are the masters of anime spectacle. There's so much passion in Asura's Wrath that you can just feel.
It is,
yeah.
They can just feel like, oozing from every scene. And I want to see CyberConnect 2 be able to, if not a remaster or a remake or a sequel or something new.
Right. But I do think that part of it as well, though, is that, like that sort of gimmick of being an anime episode, like if you don't have that point of reference, like the whole game is lost on you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like you have no idea why all this stuff is happening, why they keep rolling credits over and over,
I'd be curious though, because I think Asura's Wrath just maybe hit at the wrong time, whereas now I think games are so consumed on streaming. I actually think this is a game that you could successfully stream to a large audience and have it be interesting and enticing just because of how insane things get. Yeah, I wonder how it would do nowadays. I don't know. Is the Demon Slayer game great?
It is. Yeah.
You're making me want to check
Legitimately,
it out.
it's great.
Okay, all right. I just watched Mugen Train, so I'm definitely...
okay. Yeah,
man.
we recently just caught up on season 2, yeah.
Okay. The entertainment arc?
Yeah.
How is that? Because I'm going to dig into it.
It's cool. It's one of those anime things where it's like, oh, this doesn't really move as far as I thought it would. It's like, oh, okay, this whole season is just here pretty much. Whereas the first season had so much going on, you know. So it's a little to that end. It's like, oh, we didn't move as far forward in the story as I thought we would, but I still really enjoyed it.
The Entertainment District arc, like it, probably around episode 8, I'm like, this is the best Demon Slayer's ever been. And then episode 9 comes out, I'm like, how did it top it? Episode 10 comes out, like it's still topping itself.
Holy shit!
It keeps on getting better and better until I think there's like just an amazing finale for that arc.
God damn it. Because I had been meaning to watch Mugen Train for forever, and I finally got around to it, and I was like, oh, I wasn't expecting you to be emotionally devastating. Obviously, don't want to get into spoilers, but boy, one particular character at the end, and everybody's just crying those big anime tears. You're just like, oh my God.
The game does a really, really good job of retelling the anime in the same way that they do a really good job with Naruto. So like
how much does the game cover? I think Huber said
it covers up to Mugen Train.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah.
Because Demon Slayer's doing this super annoying thing where, like, there's the Mugen Train movie, which I have watched, but then there's also they have it in episodic form, and from my understanding is a lot of it is just the movie cut up, but there is some new stuff, and so it's like, okay, do I need to watch the episodes as well, or am I fine with just the movie? I hate decisions.
Just watch the movie.
I just watched the episodes.
Oh, you watched the episode? You didn't watch the movie? So
right.
Okay.
Yeah, it's basically the same.
Okay.
Have you watched Jujutsu Kaisen?
No, but the movie's coming out soon, and I hear the movie.
I've seen it. I saw a advanced screener. Watch Jujutsu Kaisen.
How many seasons of...
There's only one season right now. Season 2 is coming in 2023. If you've not seen Jujutsu Kaisen, please watch the movie. It's a prequel, and it totally sets up the first season.
I think I might binge that before getting into the entertainment arc. I think you've sold me.
It's so good.
Yeah.
I love modern shonen anime. We've come a long way, guys.
I think because let's see, the movie's out. I think in the 18th, and I haven't gone to an anime movie in a long time. That'd be fun to go to. That's all. I'm also got so many reviews. Fuck.
I feel you.
Things are a little tight right now. All right.
I feel you.
Mitch.
Yeah.
Let's talk about King of Fighters 15, a long overdue discussion. I feel really bad. I have not played King of Fighters 15 in quite some time. I haven't even played it online, but it is a game that when I have played it, I've really enjoyed it. And I know you reviewed it for IGN. What was your takeaway? Somebody who plays a shit ton of fighting games.
I play a lot of fighting games, but this is actually like the first King of Fighters game that I've really tried to get into on a more than casual level.
Yeah.
And I like it. It's not what I was super expecting.
Interesting.
I expected it to be like really, really technically difficult. And like with really, really tight like combo windows. And I don't really think it's that. Like most of like the crazy, life bar deleting combos that you can do in that game, I feel are relatively easy to do. It's just a matter of like knowing the system and knowing what combos into what. And you just kind of need the meter to be able to do it.
It's interesting that you say that because I don't necessarily disagree with you, but I also think you're coming from the perspective of somebody who has fighting game fundamentals, understands how these games work, understand like how to perform these actions. I wonder. I don't think that would be true with somebody less adept.
I wouldn't like recommend this as a first time fighting game over something like Guilty Gear Strive or over like Fantasy Strike. Obviously, it is kind of one of those things that you do kind of have to have that extra level of fundamentals to be able to really understand. They do auto combos. Which I think, I say this in the review, I think they're actually detrimental to new players because they reinforce bad habits.
Yeah. I feel like the damage scaling on the auto combos is like so intense that it's like you don't even need
You can do like half damage combos with auto combos, but you could do more than that for not much harder execution.
I just feel like the addition of the auto combos is so limp here that it's like I don't think you need this.
I don't think you need it. I mean I'm of the opinion we should just get rid of auto combos in every fighting game, but yeah.
Yeah, to bounce off of that, I think King of Fighters 15 is so much fun to play.
Yeah.
And like you, I'm by no means a King of Fighters 15 expert. I've definitely tried to dig more into this than other King of Fighters like you have. And it's been a blast, but like I'm so frustrated because it's like I feel like only a small window of people can really appreciate this, right? Because like the tutorials I feel like are basically non-existent. Like this does not do a great job of getting you to understand the things that make this game cool.
Yeah. It does not.
Because even like certain like fighting game things that it doesn't follow. Like you don't really do like lights into heavies into supers. It's like you do like a heavy into a command normal into a thing. Like even just like the way basic things chain together, I think you could do a better job of explaining how that works because there are similarities between the characters, and once you start to see those threads, I think it makes it easier to learn things.
Yeah, I think fighting games need to go away from just explaining what things do and just kind of like be a person talking to me and telling me what any of this means. Instead of telling me that, a medium kick, press medium kick. Okay, move on to the heavy kick. Okay,
Right.
but wait. What should I do with a medium kick? Like,
Right.
This is a spacing tool. This is something that you should use in the neutral to poke. This is something that you can use and go into a max cancel and get a free combo off of.
Yeah.
It needs stuff like that. It needs to go beyond just surface level, this is what the move does.
Right.
And King of Fighters does not do that.
No.
Guilty Gear Strive, I think, does actually do a pretty good job
the
of,
mission mode.
explaining the context of why you want to do each thing. And yeah, Guilty Gear Strive, I think, it sets so many benchmarks that I hope, future fighting games look at and, realize, hey, that's a good idea.
There is something to King of Fighters 15 though that I find appealing, where like it almost feels like a fighting game from a different era, where like it is pretty rigid and traditional when it comes to modes and things like tutorials. And I described it to, I think it was Isla, where I was like, this is a fighting game fan's fighting game. And like if you already have that knowledge, I think just mechanically it's so ridiculously fun, and this game just kind of has this mentality of like, I don't know, man, just like do it. Like, do you want to cancel a super into a bigger super? You can go for it. And I think that freedom is pretty liberating, and I think the characters, like, for having such a large roster, so many of the characters are so much fun, where like I was just going through and playing as many people as I could, and I was like, I like almost everybody, right? And I still think the King of Fighters setup, right, where you pick a team of 3 and then you have to go through each person's team of 3 individually, I still think that setup is like really unique and special and fun in the current landscape of fighting games.
What I really love about that, the trios, but it's not like it's basically 3 one-on-one matches that you do. Instead, there being tag assists, which I like tag fighting games. They're a little overwhelming for me.
Same, yeah.
But what I really, really like about the format of having 3 one-on-one fights is that it allows for these really great comebacks and like this feeling that you're not, even though you're one against half of a lead character on the other team and then their other 2 characters, because of the way that it's structured, if you smartly reserve your super meter, you can absolutely make that comeback happen. Like, the damage that you can do with 7 bars of meter or whatever in this game is absurd. So it really has that feeling of like you're never out of the game, and I think it makes it really fun to watch. Like, we're gonna see some hype matches at EVO this year for King of
man,
Fighters
it is gonna be really fun to watch. You're so right about that. Touching on that, I think the other thing that is interesting, right, is like you think about a traditional fighting game, the process of learning, right, and it's like, okay, well, I want to play everybody, but I think I'm best with this person, so I'm going to stick with this person. You really grind it out, and it's like you can't do that here. It's like you need 3 individual fighters that you need to practice with, and that becomes interesting because it's like, well, I'm not equally good with all 3 of them, and then so like how you work around those shortcomings and where you place them, I think strategically is just really cool.
Yeah, I think what I've done basically, my team is basically Blue Mary, Cronin, and Terry. And I kind of approach it like, okay, here's what I want to do with Blue Mary. I want to, do as much damage as I can with using as little meter as I can. And Blue Mary's good at that because she has really good mix-ups. She's confusing. People don't know how to deal with her grabs and stuff. Then once I get to Cronin, I'm just like, okay, well, I got good spacing. I got good damage if I need it. And then when I get to Terry, it's just like, all right, I'm going to empty every single bar that I have and just nuke this person if I get one touch.
Yeah. Cronin is a good character to bring up because he has like 3 special moves, right? Like he's very easy
he's got the fireball, he's got the DP, and he's got a jumping slash. That's it.
He's a fun character, but he's a basic character, and I feel like because the roster is so big, like there really is somebody for everyone, right? It depends on like what you're looking for, how you want to play, and I think that's so cool. Boy, you mentioned Terry. I feel like I always gravitate to Terry, and I was adamant with King of Fighters 15 where I'm like, I love Terry, but I feel like it's playing Ryu all the time. Like I need to branch out. I need to not pick Terry. And then I was like, I'm going to mess around with Terry and train him a little bit. And then I walked away from that experience being like,
I gotta use Terry.
Not play Terry. He's so fucking cool that like I need to play him. There's just something about him that I love so much. Yeah, he's definitely played Terry.
Buster Wolf also just one of the coolest, simple supers in fighting games.
So online, how have you been finding matches? Has it been like you've been playing against KOF gods that are just like impossible to overcome?
I would say it's not so much. I mean, it does use a ranking system where, like, if you want to rise up through those ranks and fight those KOF gods, you gotta not lose.
Yeah.
And I lose.
Yeah.
So I feel like the matchmaking has been fairly successful in putting me against people that I don't just immediately destroy and don't immediately destroy me.
That's exactly what you want. Has the quality of the connections been okay?
Pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
They had a beta when they first came out. When their first beta was really rough and it was like alarmingly bad. But then I think they had a second beta and that was much better. And then this one, I've been playing people across the country, and it's not perfect. I don't think it's as good as Guilty Gear Strive's netcode, but it is certainly functional. And I can get if I play 10 matches, I would say 8 to 9 of them are good. No issues.
I'm kind of terrified with KOF 15 because I feel like this happens all the time with fighting games, where like even the most dedicated people, right? Like a lot of professionals, like watching them stream, they will move from game to game. I feel like a lot of fighting games, like they just get a very brief moment in the sun, and it sucks. Like Samurai Showdown is a really cool game in a lot of ways, and it absolutely has problems. Not the least of which is its netcode. But it just comes and goes, and that's just one example. I feel like there are so many examples of things where like people kind of play them and they're hyped for a minute, and then they pretty much never get talked about again. That's why I'm so excited for Grand Blue Fantasy Versus to get some attention at EVO. But yeah, I think KOF 15 is really cool and really fun, and I would love to see it last longer. And I know that in like Latin America countries, like it's huge, but with that and with everybody, I would love for it to stick around for a while.
Yeah, I think with any fighting game now, you gotta take like the mid-tier player and convert them to high tier.
Right.
You can't just go after the casual person and get them in, because they're not gonna stick with it.
Right. That's what I was just going to say. Like the nature of being casual is that you will pick up a drive. There's nothing wrong with that, of course. That's not an insult. But yeah, I totally agree. I think there's a segment of people that want to put in the time, but just there's something in the way of them getting to that point.
Yeah, and I think that's where we come back to, better tutorials, better netcode. You gotta give people who are at that mid-level reason to keep playing.
Yeah.
And hopefully, KOF's netcode will do that. I do think they really need a better training mode.
Yeah.
Or better tutorial, better onboarding.
Yeah, for sure. Well, we're going to keep talking about fighting games on the HOTTAKE because we have two games very much on the horizon, and they're gigantic to the point where, like, I think both of them could kind of shape fighting games for this generation and in completely different ways. But that is Street Fighter 6 and Mortal Kombat 12. Mm-hmm. And the simple question is, what do you want to see out of these games? Blood, as somebody who does not play fighting games as fervently,
right?
But I know you really love Street Fighter. I don't know, I guess, how you feel about Mortal Kombat, but I know you really love Street Fighter. Like, what is something that would excite you?
Yeah, it's hard because it's just one of those things of, like you're saying, like just getting the time to actually dig into something outside of a stream or something like that.
Yeah, for sure.
And like I was like on the edge, like, oh, maybe I should grab Guilty Gear, and then, like, never got around to it. And like when we played King of Fighters, like I enjoyed that. I enjoy every time that we do bring something in there. I just never really have that time to pick it up outside of that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think a lot of what you're saying about, having good training modes, good ways of acclimating you to those sorts of things. And then, I think in a way maybe like I think what like the funny things about like the original like Street Fighter and Mortal Kombat games is they had those sort of like intermission moments, they're like, oh, my car and stuff like that. And I really I think that there's some way to leverage that sort of like, I'm just goofing off right now, but actually you're not. You think you're goofing off, but it's actually teaching you something and you just don't realizing it. And so I think that's something that, that perhaps, could come up with Street Fighter or something where it's like, okay, the way to actually maximize your damage on this is actually like giving you the motions and the repetition for something that you're going to need as a fundamental.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point, Blood, because on the podcast, I think I talked about like different modes that could engage people in different ways, and I do think that is true and something worth having. But I think you're really onto something pretty brilliant where it could even just be these micro moments to break up the fights, and even if it's just something like okay, like Dan is going to teach you how to parry. Try to do that 5 times, and maybe it takes 30 seconds to do, but you're like, okay, like that's a skill that maybe I got just like a smidge better at. Yeah.
And they kind of actually do that in Street Fighter 3 with like the basketball mini game where you have to parry the basketballs that, Sean shoots at you. But yeah, I think that's absolutely a great thing that Street Fighter has kind of forgotten about, and they should definitely, bring it back.
Yeah. Street Fighter is so frustrating to me because I genuinely believe that it is not only one of the greatest and most endearing casts in all of fighting games, but really in all of video games. I mean, like those characters are so hilariously iconic and so universally beloved, and I just don't feel like they do enough with them, right? And you think about the premise of Street Fighter, right? World Warriors, right? Like, why is it not like even just like it doesn't have to be open world or anything like that, but like really make it feel like you're going to a new place, right? Like if I go all the way over to like India or Russia, like find a way to like let me soak in the culture a little bit more, or have it be a little bit more of a spectacle than just a new stage. I think there's something there that could be tapped into.
What I think Street Fighter really needs, and I'm gonna take a cue from Mortal Kombat. I'm gonna like compare it to Mortal Kombat. You look at Sub-Zero. What do you know about what does a Mortal Kombat fan know about Sub-Zero? Sub-Zero is he's a member of the Lin Kuei. His younger brother basically took over the mantle of him. He's got this intense rivalry with Scorpion that involves all this stuff with Quan Chi and him manipulating Scorpion, and there's so much going on with Sub-Zero. Look at Ryu. What can you tell me about Ryu? He's a strong boy who likes to fight.
Yeah.
He's got a rivalry with Ken. There's some evil thing going on with him, the Satsui no Hado.
Right. There's stuff going on there, but it doesn't really. Right. They don't really bring it to the forefront.
Yeah. There's no tangible narrative. I feel like going forward with Ryu that's referenced in various Street Fighter games. So what I would like to see Street Fighter 6 do is be that origin point. Like let's do a story mode that really goes through each of these characters and tells us what they're all about. Yeah. I want to know more about Chun-Li than she's a policeman or whatever. More about Cammy than she was brainwashed by Bison at one time.
For sure. Yeah, absolutely. And I think something, people have talked up and down about how good and well presented the NetherRealm story modes are, and they are, but I think something that is important to them is they're also really focused, where it's like, we are going to focus on these characters, and not every character is going to be as important because we want to just tell a compelling story, right? And so I think with Street Fighter 6, I would like to see that approach as well, even if it was something as like, okay, we're pretty much just going to focus on like Ryu or Ken or Ryu and Luke or whoever, but like really give you like an anchor or something to latch onto, really delve into them. I think that could be really, really cool.
Yeah, for sure. And then, just from a mechanics perspective, I trust Capcom to come up with something new that, ends up being Street Fighter 6's hook. I don't really know what I want that to be, but Street Fighter 3 had the parries, Street Fighter 4 had the focus attacks, Street Fighter 5 has V reversals and V skills, and I'm sure Street Fighter 6 will come up with something interesting for us to sink our teeth into.
Yeah, like I could talk about like stuff surrounding the mechanics of Street Fighter 6, but I had this moment where I was like, oh, Street Fighter 6 is going to get announced. I was like, what do I want them to do? And I like mechanically, and I was like, boy, I can't think of anything. I can't imagine what they feel like, right? Where you have Street Fighter has been going on for so long, right? And there are certain basic things, like you can't have a Street Fighter game without fireballs and dragon punches, right? So like on a fundamental level, there are some things you need, but like beyond that, what do you do? Like what is the thing? What is the hook for the new Street Fighter? Like you have to have supers, right? You have to have EX attacks.
Add Roman cancels, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, I wouldn't be against it.
Yeah.
Roman cancels, I think, are the coolest thing in fighting games, but...
Yeah, it's just... Because I feel like they will want to appeal to a broader audience as well, and so I don't know. I don't know what there's going to be. Mm-hmm. This might be a hot take, because I do enjoy playing Mortal Kombat 11. I really, really do. I had a great time with it. I think it's too basic. Like, I almost think it's too stripped down, where, like, it's just like, okay, like, this is what this character does, and you just kind of do, like, I felt limited in a way. I'd like to see it opened up a little bit more. Mm-hmm. I don't know necessarily how.
Yeah,
but.
I mean, one of the things I've kind of thought of for the past couple of years with Mortal Kombat is that, I feel like it's limited by its own hook, because the gore being such an emphasis, I feel like it's like, oh, you've got that shock value, but then after you watch a bunch of matches, it's like, okay, now that's just a thing you want to skip.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's such a shame, because like there is something magical, like the first time you see all of those fatalities.
Yeah. You're
like, wow, they really put in a ton of effort to this. These are really cool.
And the fatal blows too.
Yeah, the fatal blows as well. It's a good thing to bring up. And then Aftermath added friendships in Mortal Kombat 11. Like, all that stuff is super fun, and I think essential to the game. But I definitely reached this point with Mortal Kombat where I'm like, boy, I wish there was more than 2 fatalities for this character. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
because you get really sick of it, and you're like, yeah, I never need to see that again. It has no appeal anymore. Yeah.
And I know it's like tough to pull that off, but like in a way, I think part of that would be, it's like, even if it's not a different input, just have other things, other options, other cutscenes that play for this fatality. Call it the same thing, but make it do something kind of different.
I do think brutalities in Mortal Kombat are really cool, because the whole premise of brutality is like, oh, you'll get this special finisher, special way to end the match, but you have to fulfill a specific condition. And that's cool, because there are moments where you're like, oh, I want to end them with the brutality, so I'm going to change the way that I play. I really like that. I wonder if you could extend that philosophy to fatalities, because like the way fatalities work is just like, okay, you won. Do you want to input the command? If it could maybe be a little bit more contextual beyond stage fatalities of like, oh, like you did this special thing, and so that's the only way you can get this special fatality to maybe make it a little bit more rare and more exciting when you see
maybe
it.
Maybe like, you did this special move against the wall, so you get this thing, or you did this one, at this specific spot. And they kind of have a little bit of that with some of like the stage brutalities. But yeah, I can totally see that. I think Mortal Kombat 12 has a really, really tough job to overcome here, in that, with Injustice, Mortal Kombat X, and Mortal Kombat 11, they've kind of been like, iterating upon this thing of character variations, character customizations, to the point in like Mortal Kombat 11, you can totally customize your own version of your character with all kinds of special moves, that someone else might not even play with, who uses the same character. You can totally change their look. So like, there's nowhere. I don't know where else there is to go with that system, and also I don't know how they can remove themselves from that system, because they've kind of gotten so attached to it with Injustice and Mortal Kombat, the last 3 Mortal Kombat games.
I do feel like the character customization is something where NetherRealm just super excels. Like the variety and how much you can change your characters is really cool. And the fact that it's not just like putting on a different skin, it's like piece by piece you can customize them. Super in support of that. I am weirdly over variations.
Yeah. I am kind of too. I really didn't mess around. Like I would pick my one variation with my like, you know, 1 or 2 characters, and I would stick with that. I actually really liked when they had tourney mode and you didn't have to deal with all the other variations, but not now in ranked mode they allow custom variations. I'm like, I don't really want to deal with learning how to deal with 500 other things that these characters can do. So maybe what I want from MK12 is for them to get away from that.
Yeah.
Just, you know, focus on single characters, single move sets, and just make them as, you know, as good and as interesting as they can.
Because I feel like on paper, variations are really exciting where you're like, oh man, I love this character. And I have all of this different ways that I can play them and customize them. And I feel like in practice, that's never how variations have ended up for me. Where it's like, I like that variation. And then it's just like, I feel like I just kind of stick to things so fiercely or prefer one thing over the other so much that I didn't feel that flexibility nearly as much as I ever wanted to. Because, on paper, they're so cool. Also, shout out to the Crypt in MK11.
I was going to say, the problem with throwing out all that customization is that you throw out all those things that they can put in the Crypt.
Right, yeah. I do think Mortal Kombat was kind of onto something, even though the balance was way off at the beginning of like the towers and like having consumable items and kind of making more of an RPG out of it. I think that stuff is really cool. And I would love for something in Street Fighter, again, like having something like the Crypt where you could like go and explore like areas that are significant to these characters or just unlock cool things. I don't know. I feel like fighting games could do a better job with unlockables. Yeah. And I think NetherRealm understands that in a way that other people are not trying.
I will say, NetherRealm, knock it off with the jump scares in the Crypt.
You don't like that?
Knock it off. I don't like it.
Oh, man. I've said it plenty of times. People are probably sick of hearing it by now, but I really like the Capcom Fighters Network. It's something that I wish every fighting game had where you could just...
Like the gold, silver...
No, not that. Like, it's like, oh, okay, like, let's say I'm learning, I don't know, like, let's say I'm learning Ken. I can go into the Capcom Fighters Network, sort all the Ken players, right? So I can see the best in the world. I could see bronze rank Ken if I want to. And it's just like you can follow individual people. And I think watching people play fighting games is so essential to learning and having a robust system.
It really is.
Yeah. To help facilitate that is awesome.
Guilty Gear Strive also has a system that I'm really fond of with their replay thing, where you can basically set parameters. So you can say, okay, I want to only see people in Celestial rank. I want to see Giovanna as, you know, the character that's being played. I want to see a match where Giovanna wins, and I want to see, you know, who Giovanna is fighting against. So if I'm having trouble with like the Chip matchup, I can set Giovanna versus Chip. Giovanna wins, and I can see what that Giovanna is doing that I'm not, you know, in this chip matchup. Yeah. So, yeah, anything like that, I think, should be standardized. I feel like the perfect fighting game is already out there.
It just needs to be an amalgamation.
We just need to take a bunch of things from different fighting games and put them all together.
I feel like I've said this before, but that is something that is so frustrating about fighting games is you will see one company like excel in one area, and then a different company excel in a completely different area and totally suck at the area that the other company is doing well in. And it's like, no, like, just learn from them and do your thing. Yeah, it is immensely frustrating. Are we ready for some emails?
Let's do it.
Our first email comes in from Brandon, who asks, hello, everyone. I'm currently still chipping away at Horizon Forbidden West, and in prior circumstances, I would have finished it by now, but I still have so much left to do, and I feel like I'm going to be playing for quite some time. In addition, I've been playing 6 matches a day in Halo Infinite just for the achievement to say I've reached level 100, and spending so many days on these games makes me wonder, what's the longest amount of time you've spent with a game in terms of continuous days or weeks, but not in terms of playtime? In other words, what's a game you kept with for a significant stretch, even if you could only dedicate an hour or two per play session? Thanks for taking this email if you do, and stay easy, fellow allies.
I was gonna say Elden Ring for review, but then you said only an hour or two at a time.
Yeah, just like something you kept checking in
Yeah.
with for a long period of time. Yeah.
Probably Guilty Gear Strive.
Nice.
Yeah.
Good answer.
I mean, I've fallen off of it recently because of work stuff. But when Guilty Gear Strive came out, I was playing that all the way, like pretty much every day, all the way till the end of the year at the very least.
Nice.
Yeah, I feel like I'm pretty good at Guilty Gear Strive. I'm excited to go to Evo and test my luck at it.
Hell yeah.
Actually, do you remember when we went to Wednesday Night Fights together?
I do. Yeah.
I've
Way
been-
back
I've
in
been
Street Fighter 5.
I've been competing in online Wednesday Night Fights every now and then.
I have gotten away from watching Wednesday Night Fights, but I should watch them again.
Yeah.
I obviously spent a long time playing Hearthstone, but a contemporary answer, I just cannot get away from Dead by Daylight. Like, I wouldn't say it's like continuous for months on end, but like, I've been going in and out of Dead by Daylight obsession now for like years. Like, I'm surprised how long I've been sticking with it, and I'm still a pretty bad killer, but I've gotten a lot better at Survivor, and it's just like there's something about this game that I cannot get away from, and I think it's because my wife likes it so much too, which I don't understand because horror is like her least favorite thing ever. And I think part of the reason I'm not great at killer is because she can't handle games in first person, which you play killer in first person, so I've just had to, that's part of the reason I've played so much Survivor. But yeah, like the new Ring Sadako chapter is really fun. I think she's super fun to play. I cannot quit Dead by Daylight.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the two that come to mind is, Animal Crossing, of course, which is sort of built for that. And sort of similar to you, it's like part of one of the things that keeps me in an Animal Crossing game is that, is my wife will keep playing it,
nice.
and so it's funny because we've had different stretches to where, we had both stopped playing it for a while, but then we had the DLC came out, and then she got back into it. And I started the DLC a little bit, but then I really, I broke off, so I haven't been continuing it now. But I had a pretty long run there. And then, Forza Horizon 5.
Nice.
Was like one of the times where, because I feel like with pretty much any racing game, kind of even like with GT7, it's like, okay, I'm done with the campaign. There's still a lot more to do. But then once I've gotten through that brutal beast of a review, then I kind of okay, I'm free.
Yeah, you can get it. Yeah, for sure.
And Forza was, Horizon was one where I would keep going back to it and be like, okay, well maybe I'll hit all the billboards. Okay, I did all that. It's like, okay, well maybe I'll do all the dirt races because I have, there's still dirt races left, and I really like the dirt races. And it's just there's be some checklist or another to keep going back to and keep having fun with that game. And so
For sure.
Yeah, I brought that. Yeah, what the funniest part about that was I brought my Xbox with me for Christmas, and I had just sort of, hooked it up and made sure everything was running, and got it set. And I wasn't planning to play Forza that day, and then it was just all night long, and then the next day, It's like, oh, there's other things I was planning to play on this trip.
Last night, I was like, okay, we'll play Dead by Daylight for a little bit, and then we'll continue Horizon because I really wanted to get back to that. That didn't happen. We just kept rocking Dead by Daylight. I love when you just get so into a game that it kind of bulldozes other things.
Shout out to Among Us also, because
Nice.
Among Us for me was really that quarantine game that
Awesome.
really hit at the perfect time when you couldn't see any of your friends, but you could still get into a Discord chat and play Among Us for a couple hours every couple days.
For sure. Yeah, I feel like I haven't played Among Us in whenever the last time we
I
played.
haven't played it in a while.
Yeah, I've only done it a few times. Fall Guys was one that I went back to for a little while.
Cool.
Yeah.
Our next email comes in from Alex, who says, "Hi, allies. Before Elden Ring, I would have mostly agreed with Brandon's review. However, since playing FromSoft's Masterpiece, I cannot bring myself to go back. The map is generic, the characters are boring, and the story takes a weird direction. While the combat is amazing, there's never anything exciting to kill. Thunderjaws are awesome, but even they become trivial. Basically, and I'm not trying to say Brad and Brandon are wrong, if Horizon Forbidden West is a 9, Elden Ring is an 11. So my question for the panel is, has a later release ever killed another game for you?
I mean, I don't think to like that degree. I don't really think of games like that in that way. I think, you know, even if one game does something really well, another game can stand on its own merits. You don't need to necessarily compare everything to everything. And like in my review, I say that, you know, Elden Ring, you know, is going to be a game that I think we're going to look back on. Like, you know, developers are probably going to look back on as like, you know, new standards of open world design. That doesn't mean that every open world game should be like Elden Ring. I don't think every, you know, I don't think any Assassin's Creed should adopt the no side quest, you know, journal or whatever. But yeah, it's hard to answer.
Yeah. I thought this email was interesting because I feel like I have definitely had a moment where getting sucked into another game kind of killed my interest in a different game, but I cannot remember what. Like, in the moment, I feel like I do have a good answer for this, and I think it's a good question, but I just don't know.
My main difficulty is just when things I have to do for work, just bulldoze what I, you know, and again, it tends to be those open world games that get bulldozed. It's like, you know, like I was really, you know, I put like 60 something hours into Cyberpunk. I don't think I was that far in the story.
Yeah.
You know, but then because there are other things that like started piling in, and then I got knocked out of Cyberpunk, you know, and I still, you know, look at that once in a while. I was like, oh, I want to get back into that sometime, but when, you know, and and I've had the same sort of experience with like the first Horizon with Ghost of Tsushima, and it's like those open world games. Like I really love diving into them, but because it's easy for me to sink so much time in, it's also easy for me to get knocked out by just things I've got to do.
Yeah, I will say, like, you know, iteratively, you know, playing Smash Brothers, you know, Ultimate makes it hard to go back to, like, you know, Smash 4 or you know,
for sure
earlier Smash Brothers game.
Right.
The same way that, you know, playing maybe Street Fighter is not the best example, but maybe like Guilty Gear Strive. You know, if once you get used to playing Guilty Gear Strive and you're used to that, you know, rollback netcode, you're used to how people play in that game. It's kind of hard to go back to Xrd sometimes. So I think iteratively, you know, sure, I think there's definitely games like that, even if I can't think of great ones right now.
Yeah, this job, to elaborate on your point, Blood, is a blessing and a curse sometimes because, like, for a pretty long stretch, I was really good at, like, getting through Halo challenges, and I was really playing that multiplayer a lot, and then it just gets to a point where you're like, I can't devote the same amount of time to this anymore. I have to move on to other things. And part of that is my own desire to want to play a bunch of things, but then part of it is, like, all right, my job is pushing me to move on. And that can be heartbreaking because, like, man, I miss playing a shit ton of Halo. That was really fun. Yeah. All right. Our last email comes in from Wesley. Greetings, Ben and Allies. Elden Ring is out, and it's a hit. People can't get enough of this game, and it's a massive world, and it's awesome to see so much enthusiasm for the game. However, despite the enormous open-world nature of Elden Ring, I can't help but notice that it's largely comprised of the traditional trappings of previous Souls entries, between the dark fantasy world, the tough as nails combat systems, the creepy enemy design, numerous hair-raising boss encounters, and even bonfires in the form of sites of grace. This is still very much a Soulsborne game, don't get me wrong. I absolutely love it, and it's still a first-in-class gaming experience, but I often wonder if From Software continues to maintain this formula, how much longer people will continue to buy in. I appreciated the fact that Sekiro was such a departure from traditional Souls-style games in many ways, with its more forward narrative and parry-focused combat. Felt like From was taking things in a bold new direction. Now they've pivoted back to their more traditional formula with Elden Ring. I hate to see a great formula ridden into the ground to the point of detriment looking at you, Far Cry series. Do you think that From needs to shake things up more than they already have, than they already are with their games, or is making another Dark Souls in Spirit game perfectly acceptable with a few minor tweaks? If you do want to see them shake things up more considerably, which direction would you like to see them take? Thanks for reading my question if you do, and stay easy, fellow allies.
Really good question. I think just from my own personal tastes, I actually think FromSoft has done a pretty good job of varying up all their releases. Like Dark Souls 1 feels very different from Dark Souls 2, feels very different from Dark Souls 3, at least from like a mechanicals perspective, even though they still have the same general setting. And then, you go further than that in like, Bloodborne's obviously very different from that. Sekiro is a completely, different direction. And with Elden Ring, I don't think you can undersell how much of a change adding an open world to the Dark Souls formula, is.
Yeah, so when I played the network test, I was actually pretty down on Elden Ring because I'm like, it feels too familiar. Nope. I think what has really blown me away about Elden Ring, or one of the things that's really blown me away, is how transformative the open world is, and how the way that it's implemented feels so thoughtful and unique and magical. And so I very much get where Wesley is coming from, because I had the very same fears, but I when I play Elden Ring, I don't feel like, oh, I'm doing this again. As somebody who's pretty aggressively played the Souls games, it feels different because of the execution.
So from my perspective, I think they just kind of need to do what they've been doing, and never rest on their laurels. I don't think there should be just an Elden Ring 2 that does just basically more of what Elden Ring 1 does. I think they need to iterate upon it in some sort of interesting way that takes it in a different direction, even if it's just a slight veer from the path. I
think you did a good job though of highlighting, because I think if you really take a look at their lineage, over the last 13 years, they really have, even despite having like a base to work from with all of these games, I do think they've made them sufficiently distinct. And after playing Elden Ring and after being so in love with it, I think I'm kind of at a point right now where I'm not finished with Elden Ring, but I'm at a point right now where I'm like, I think you are so talented, and you are, this far in to the, the Souls formula. You're hitting it at this quality and making it resonate this much. Like, I trust you will not fuck it up. Like you've definitely earned my benefit of the doubt to a pretty dramatic degree, I think.
Yeah, I think, in some ways, I think a lot of it comes down to just kind of the aesthetic and the build variety and stuff. Like, just having not started yet and seeing from a distance, like a lot of that stuff feels very familiar to Dark Souls, whereas like Bloodborne and Sekiro is like, okay, like there's similarities, but they go in pretty different directions. So yeah, I do wonder if a lot of it really just comes down to aesthetic details, like maybe if they did something that was, say, in the Armored Core universe, and like everything you were doing, was more with, guns and technology, and you could get into a mech and destroy a wall, and find a secret that way or something, along those lines. Like that may be kind of the thing that like, feels different, just because, it's just not like swords and sorcery and
for
all
sure.
of that. Yeah.
One thing that I would like to see From do is I would like to see them take on an established brand and see what they can do with it. Like a From Software Berserk game, I think would be sick to see what they can do with.
From Software Castlevania game.
From Software Castlevania. Let's go.
I think another thing about Elden Ring that is special is absolutely there are so many aspects that you could take from Elden Ring and put in a Souls game and they wouldn't be out of place. But Elden Ring really does take full advantage of its open world and gets kind of weird at times in ways that are really exciting. Like there are moments where I'm like, oh, this could be like a Bloodborne thing, right? And so it does vary. But yeah, a totally new thing. It's funny because like you mentioned like mechs, and that's something that they've history with, and you mentioned Berserk, and I mentioned Castlevania. I feel like that is all kind of in their wheelhouse. So I wonder like what would be really wild for them, like a contemporary dating game, like,
Kart racer.
Yeah, kart racing. Like, what would really stretch their boundaries? I don't know.
Social deduction game.
That is going to do it for Frame Trap. Thank you to everybody who wrote in. If you would like to send in an email, the address is askeasyallies@gmail.com. One more time, that is askeasyallies@gmail.com. Big, big, big thank you to my special guest, Mitch, for driving all the way over here, being on the episode. Yeah, it was super fun. And, of course, thank you to Daniel Bloodworth. Until next time.